Hey, my name's Elijah Winslow. I'm a 19-year-old senior in pre-med and a future doctor. We're going to be talking about Nazis today, and I hope you enjoy the video. Please flex that attention span. This is the longest video that I've ever made. It also is the most comprehensive. I've spent probably about 10 hours preparing for this, and I hope it shows. I'm still not as eloquent as I'd like to be, but I'm talking about some really good points. So, flex that attention span. If you don't want to watch the whole thing, I would recommend you skip around to points number 2, 3, and 4. They're in the middle of the video. There's 6 points entirely. And I'm just going to cut right to it. Let's get into the Nazis. Oh, it's barely past episode 10 and we're talking about Nazis. Today I'm reading a book by Erwin Lutzer, When a Nation Forgets God. And I'll be giving a bit of a summary, but we're just really going to be talking about Nazis today. And I hope you enjoy. So let's get into the first point. When God is separate from government, judgment follows. I'm just going to read the first paragraph to you guys. Hitler did not discourage people from attending church. He was a baptized Catholic who had long since abandoned his faith. But he did not mind if others continued to attend church, as long as it did not affect the way they lived or the values they held. He called this positive Christianity. I don't know if that sounds familiar to you. Positive Christianity. We're just focused on the up and the up. But yes, Hitler was technically a Christian. He hated Christianity because he did not want God involved in the government because he believed he was God. I'm going to get into a lot of the effects of tearing away Christianity from the West, or any religion from a society and government. But I want to focus in on this first point. When God is separate from government, judgment follows. What does that mean? Why is it so important to have leaders that have faith? And the reason is they believe in a sneaky little thing called truth. And this sounds silly to us. We always joke about politicians being spineless and having no sense of truth and dishonest. But functionally, most people operate with the assumption that there is something real, that we all exist in a reality. And our perceptions of that may differ, because perception is just the process of taking a physical stimulus and converting it to a neural signal, right? But our perceptions may differ, but reality doesn't change. It's very, very important. And God is actually the root of this. If there's no God, perception is the fundamental understanding that we understand the world through. Because humans are the most intelligent beings that we know of. And if there's no step up from our perception of the universe, our perception is actually God. More importantly, whoever's perception of the world that is most powerful is truth. Now, this is a little weedy, but what we can take away from this is that Hitler firmly did not believe in truth. And if he did, his truth was the only truth that mattered. Now, that is moral relativism, and it is pervasive in our society. It's the reason that a guy who's transitioned to a girl is upset about you telling him that he's a guy, because it breaks apart the fragmented reality of his perception. Now, I don't mean to throw shade to the pride community. Actually, I kind of do. I mean, it's true. I don't mean to hate. It's just true. I do. That's funny. Let's do a little throat clearing and land acknowledgements before we get any further, because I probably will be throwing shade at some other liberal subgroups. I have gay friends. I like a lot of gay people. Your actions and your lifestyle choices, in my opinion, do not make you who you are. I value everybody not because of what they define themselves as, but because of who they are, their souls, because they're a human being. Yeah, I had a friend who, she testified at the state against transing kids. There was a law that was being passed. I don't know if it did pass, but a teacher could help a kid transition without the permission of their parents. It was a ridiculous law. This 15, 16-year-old girl went up and testified at the state house, and she got torn apart by the legislators. I don't know if it was the House of Representatives or whatever. And they were like, do you have any gay friends? Do you have any trans friends? You wouldn't know, would you? You judgeful, hateful bigot. So, throat clearing and land acknowledgements out of the way. I just this week scheduled to grab lunch with a gay buddy of mine. I have zero hatred. Okay? So, that is point one. We cannot separate God from government. The idea of a line between church and state, one, is misquoted. Two, if anything, we should interpret it as not having a state church. But all of the founding fathers were open. If not Christians, they were deists. They believed in God, okay? Let's be very, very clear. Most presidents have been Christians of the United States. There is a reason the United States is so successful, okay? Point number two. It is always the economy. And I have a future episode about dating that is going to come out. And I've talked about one of the big issues with like marriage rates, birth rates, is we destroyed the culture that beneath these institutions of marriage and dating and family. And now it's a shockwave because the economy is no longer there to prop up a broken culture. So the 60s, the 70s, they destroyed this culture. The 80s, 90s, up until probably 2008, it was coasting. But then Gen Z does not have that economy to push the broken institution any farther. Let's talk economy in Germany. Let's, I'm going to give a brief reading from some stories of what it was like during post-World War I. So between World War I and Hitler coming to the rise, right? Stories of what life was like in post-war Germany abound. People who had fixed incomes were wiped out financially. Retirement funds were reduced to zero. Prices changed at sometimes by the hour. It's said that a student at Freiburg University ordered a cup of coffee for 5,000 marks. He ordered a second cup a little bit later, and when his bill was 14,000 marks, he protested, but was told, if you want to save money and you want 2 cups of coffee, you should order both of them at the same time. Now, this is called hyperinflation. We have never experienced anything like this before. But my friends, it is coming. Our national debt's extraordinarily high, and if we don't start paying it soon, there will come a day when the government knows the only way to bail themselves out of the debt is to print, baby, print. And when that happens, we very well may see hyperinflation, and that's going to hurt. That's going to hurt. At the height of the inflationary cycle, this book says, the people cried out for someone to end the madness. And it is a very easy choice. There's a quote, I don't remember where it's from, but it says, when presented with the choice between bread and freedom, man will always choose bread. For America, we have such good, free, easy calories. But, yeah, here's the quote. Given a choice, most people probably will choose bread and sausage above individual liberties. I think that's a great quote. And it's brutally true. Because when our economy inevitably crashes, I know we're not in a great economic state, but we will be tempted to hand over freedom to somebody that promises to take care of us. And there's a good quote that says, if you trade your freedom for security, you will lose both. Something like that. And our freedom has been hard earned. And our middle class has protected that for 250 years. And we're in the twilight stage, guys. We are in the twilight stage. We have worked really, really hard to maintain this freedom. A lot of people have died. But there are a lot of people that no longer want that freedom. They want to be just bailed out by anybody that offers. That is not a good thing. And the wealth disparity is getting bigger. Don't pretend. I don't want to pretend like it's not real. We just printed our first trillionaire, guys. We just printed a trillionaire. Elon Musk is worth more than $1 trillion estimated. And a lot of people are really struggling at the grocery store. So I'm not saying these things aren't real. It's that we are in a position now to be subject to an authoritarian government, guys. And we have to fight it. We have to, guys. The hell that was the 20th century, if it has taught us one thing, is that goodness gracious, do not trust a government to take care of you. Please. And we're seeing that. I mean, Mamdani is doing insane things in New York. And we're going to see. We're going to see what happens, dude. Trust me, it won't be good. It will not be good. So point number 1, you can't remove God from a government. Point number 2, you can destroy a culture. But when push comes to shove, the economy is the final straw. The third point is about governments. And governments can be evil. I'll quote the book for the title. It says, "That which is legal might also be evil. Either God is lawgiver or man is." What does this mean to you? Well, Hitler, I'm telling you guys, truly believed he was God, but God decides who's human, who's not human, what's valuable, what's important to society. And in a speech in 1923, Hitler said, "The Jews are undoubtedly a race, but not human. They cannot be human in the sense of being in the image of God, the eternal. The Jews are the image of the devil. Jewry means the racial tuberculosis of the nations." Hitler truly believed that Jews were subhuman. And this is a brutal, brutal truth. He actually made laws to classify Jews as non-human. You could do whatever you wanted to them. And we might be tempted to say, "Oh, we're not like that in America." Or you might be tempted to say, "Oh, I can see the same direction racism is going in America." I think both of those views are untrue. We have no racial tensions, even approximating this, okay? Rap versus country, black versus Asian, whatever you want to call racial tensions in America, are absolutely not on the level of this, okay? Even as a white boy, there's a lot of white people saying like, "Oh, there's erasure, there's the white people are being attacked and replaced." Nothing like this, dude. Okay? But there is a population that we're erasing, that we're killing. That's unborn kids. I mean, it really hurts. It really hurts to bring it up every time, because every time I think about it, it's like, oh, we still do that. And in fact, old Hippocratic oaths, I want to become a doctor. Old Hippocratic oaths used to have in your Hippocratic oath that you wouldn't help a woman kill her child, her offspring. And we've done away with that. There's something like 20% of Gen Z was killed before they were born. It's an insane number. It's a tragic number. It might not be 20%. It's probably not that high. It was high. It was a high number. There's also other bad things that are going on. But let me continue reading to you. Benjamin Franklin says this: "I have lived, sir, a long time, and the longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this truth. that God governs in the affairs of men. And if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, is it probable that an empire can rise without his aid? We have been assured, sir, in the sacred writings, that except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. I firmly believe this, and I also believe that without his concurring aid, we shall succeed in this political building no better than the builders of Babel. It's a little bit of a side tangent, but we will be punished for the things we do, guys. For the things we do, for the things we allow. I truly believe we get away with nothing in this world. And even if we get away with it in this world, I think in the next life, you truly, truly get away with nothing. Hitler experienced that. This whole situation brings me back to another point of relativism and of science that destroys culture. And that is Darwinianism being applied to law. So I talked before about the erasure of truth, right? That's a very important concept to have. That this government, and fundamentally the West in the 20th century, did away with truth. Now that has a huge amount of consequences, but one of them was a little more subtle, and it was with the rise of Darwinianism and evolutionary biology. Now, I have no problem with evolutionary biology as a biological concept. Survival of the fittest is important when looking at populations. But there's a problem. When you take that and when you put it into law, when you put it into spiritual life, when you put it into a human population, there are serious, serious consequences. And this is what happened in the 20th century. Hitler was a big Darwinist. He believed that Jews were the bottom, the scum of humans. And this is actually a perfectly acceptable idea if you don't believe in God. It just makes sense that humans arrived here by killing off the weaker versions of ourselves. And so that for humanity to excel farther, for the Aryan race to truly become pure, you must dissolve the weak. You must destroy and kill the weak. Now, Christianity says you must protect the weak. That unborn babies matter. That disabled people matter. That all races are created in the image and likeness of God. You can't kill them. But Hitler was God. Hitler decided who is human and who wasn't. Just like we are deciding that a cervix and then a vagina separates a human being from not a human being. And unfortunately, when I say that, even that statement makes me radical. Because we have been branded, and I'm going to get to propaganda more, but we have been conditioned to believe that some things are less valuable. Some human beings are less valuable than others. Eugenics. Canada has killed 100,000 of its own citizens. 95% of white, by the way. 95%, so 90 plus thousand people. 90,000 plus white Canadians have been killed by their own government. That is an astounding number. And we're right along there with them. We're currently passing legislature in the United States to make MAID, medical assistance in dying, or doctor-assisted suicide in some cases, legal. That which is legal might not always be good or safe or healthy. Laws can be sinful. And I believe our government is full of sinful laws. Now, Hitler did encourage free procreation and Hitler babies and a lot of gender roles, so he did have some conservative teaching. America, we lean liberal and left. And that means open use of pornography, celebration of the debaucherous, legalized gay marriage, easy divorce, killing kids. These are problems, guys. I don't want to be hateful. If you like any of these ideas, that's okay. I don't hate you. But they're not good ideas for society. So bear with me as we continue. I'm going to talk about euthanasia a little bit more because I need you to understand that euthanasia is how you start murdering millions of people. That's the gateway drug. Hitler started not with the Jews, but with the disabled, the old, the useless mouth feeders. The feeders that don't provide for society. That's where it will start in America. It will start with the old. It will start with the sick. It will start with the mentally ill. And when we keep killing and killing and killing, the group that is allowed to be disposed of will continue to grow. This is very, very dangerous. Eugenics is very scary to look at. This is one reason I'm against nationalized healthcare. For now. I mean, in 100,000 years, or let's say 1,000 years, if a government that is better economically run than the United States comes into power, I'm not against the concept of nationalized healthcare. But in the hands of our government, the mad bureaucracy and inefficiency, we're going to get what Canada gets. Canada was so proud of their nationalized healthcare for so long. And now you will be offered medical assistance in dying before you can get procedures. Wait times at an emergency room can be like 16 hours in Canada. I think in the last few years, like over 20,000 people have died on a waiting list to get medical care. Now, America's system is not good. In fact, I'm going to spend the rest of my life fighting to fix America's system of healthcare. But when we give the power of life and death to a doctor, we need to trust that they will do everything in their power to keep you, to keep me alive. Doctors should never, I repeat, should never have the right or the responsibility or the freedom to take a human life. That is central to the Hippocratic Oath. Because when you give somebody the knowledge and access of information that you give a doctor, they are able to take a life with what they know about the human body. You inject potassium into somebody and absolutely murk their heart, okay? But healthcare providers should not have the ability to take a life. And we're doing that. And that is evil. Mind you, that is the purest form of evil. Satan and his demons are celebrating that win, my friend. Okay? They are celebrating in hell for those things. Euthanasia, eugenics, killing the weak is dangerous to society. It is very dangerous. My next point. So that was point 3. That which is legal might also be evil. Point number 4 is that propaganda can change a nation. And boy, oh boy, I bet you know this, my friend. This is an interesting little quote from Hitler. Again, Hitler was a pretty terrible writer, so you have to bear with him. He's pretty bad at saying what he wants. But here's what he wrote in Mein Kampf. The first task of propaganda is to win people for subsequent organization. The second task of propaganda is the disruption of existing state of affairs and the permeation of the state of affairs with the new doctrine. So, you win people to some big idea, grandiose idea, that is not the current way we do things. And then you after you've sold that idea, you replace it. You replace what's actually used. While the second task of organization must be the struggle for power, thus to achieve the final success of doctrine. So you have to sell the idea, Hitler's saying. You have to make them swallow the pill. And then you can take over. And the poison can kick in. The striking success of a revolution, he wrote, will always have been achieved when the new philosophy of life, as far as possible, has been taught to all men, and if necessary, later forced upon them. Yes, this author writes, what begins as information turns out to become the law of the land. And woe to those who dare oppose the law. Hate, Hitler said, was more lasting than dislike. So we have to change people's minds about something. Which is why the people that I would argue want to destroy America. When I refer to like some, I don't know, I don't understand the deep state. I'm referring to any people that propagate the ideologies that destroy nations. So whoever that is, whatever that group of people is, whether you think it's a deep state or whatever, they have infiltrated our education. The reason is long before you make a law, you need to convince a people group that that law is necessary, that that law is just and good. You have to sell a worldview before you can take over people's lives. You must cage their minds before you cage their bodies. Isn't that interesting, huh? Let's talk about slogans. In Oceania, George Orwell's chilling totalitarian state in 1984, we have a description of the so-called Ministry of Truth. And they use subtle, sinister language, newspeak it was called, to brainwash people. And they loved slogans. War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. You are able to control the ideas that determine the political and moral views of a culture by controlling the language. And Hitler knew language and its capacity to control. And so he spammed sanitized terms for whatever he did. When he would take away people's freedom, he would say it was to give them freedom. He even talks about how selling a big lie is easier than selling a small lie because people know what it's like to lie about tiny things, but they have a harder time with big lies. So he just said, full force, just sell them the biggest lie that you can. Trust me, people are doing it to the American people. Men and women are the same. I know this is like the cultural point of like, so it's a huge culture war. And that by saying that men and women are not the same, I'm hateful, as a matter of fact. Or that endless war in the Middle East is good and it's for freedom. These are big lies. These are big sized lies that are seriously protected, right? So let's talk about some of the sanitized terms he used. When he starved children, he called it putting them on a low-calorie diet. Extermination of Jews was called cleansing the land. Who wouldn't want to cleanse the land? Euthanasia was referred to as the best of modern therapy. We're doing the exact same thing here. Children were put to death in children's specialty centers. His cronies seldom said they were going to kill people. Even when they made plans to exterminate millions of people, they just used solutions. They used sanitized terms that said, this is the final solution, the end goal. You never say what you're really doing. Murdering a government murdering 100,000 of its own civilians that didn't break the law, that didn't do anything wrong. It's called medical assistance in dying. It's not killing somebody, it's medical assistance in dying. Or dying with dignity. These are real, by the way, I'm not making these up. These are real things that are going on in Canada. Please look them up. The fetal heartbeat laws, which should be around the nation. I think ideally, if I were an idealist, we just wouldn't have abortion. But I think practically in America, it really makes no sense to go abortion past 6 weeks. I think even reasonable people should agree to that. Yeah, abortion, no abortion past 6 weeks, unless like the mother's life is at risk. Why 6 weeks, Elijah? Oh, the baby has a heartbeat. If you heard that, by the way, there's a baby downstairs. My little niece, she's a cutie. Yeah, the baby has a heartbeat at about 6 weeks. You can detect it with an ultrasound. So, mandatory. If you detect a fetal heartbeat, you shouldn't kill the kid. We have a heartbeat law at the end of life. We should probably have one at the beginning of life. Huh? Sound like a plan to me? But there are sanitized terms to describe these things. I mean, if you read an abortion, like a pro-choice, even that is a sanitized term. You're not pro-abortion, you're pro-choice. The choice to what? To an abortion? Let's call it like it is, kids. A fetal heartbeat, I heard described by an abortionist, says, just an electrically active clump of cells. Don't you understand, you backwards thinker? You Neanderthal, this isn't a heartbeat, it's the 21st century. We know this is just an electrically active clump of cells. Bigot! This guy in my chest is also an electrically active clump of cells. Yes, it's more complex. Bigot! It has 4 chambers. A baby's doesn't. By the way, babies have this thing called ductus arteriosus that sometimes doesn't close until after they're born. Yes. Anatomical development for humans. Children are not the same as adults. Gooner. What are we talking about? Of course it's not structurally identical to an adult. You think it is when they come out of the womb? Well, it's more complex by then. It's more complex when it's 2 months later as well. Like, what are we talking about? So we sanitize these words. You just batter and batter and batter with these words until people assume they're true. If you can make somebody eat your sentence structure and think about something through the perspective of the sentence structure that you give them, you control their thoughts. Calling the murder of 50,000 plus people in Israel necessary collateral damage, right? This is just collateral damage. We were going for Hamas. We just targeted civilian populations to force them into one place to bomb and then kill them faster. But we were really just going for the terrorists. What, do you really want to defend terrorists, bigot? It's just this battering of name calling. And there's another thing. Part of propaganda, another strategy that the Nazis used, which is emotionally charging words. You can do this positively or negatively, but through your branding, like Coca-Cola emotionally charges its drink. When you hold that, you actually have a feeling that is not entirely grounded in reality. That can, to you, represents a lot more than just a can, because it's been marketed so effectively. And that's actually beautiful. It's an incredible thing that the human mind can conceive of something higher than reality. But again, if we believe there's no true God, we can manipulate that extremely dangerously, because we have no higher authority to be subdued to. So the N-word is a great example of an emotionally charged word. I will never say that word. It's a bad word. It's objectively a bad word. That's just an example of an emotionally charged word. But there are ways you can emotionally charge words negatively that shouldn't be negative. Motherhood, for example. Mother. Oh, what do you do? I'm just a mom. Oh, I'm sorry. The baggage that we've attached to an idea of like motherhood or family or church or community. See, we emotionally charge words a lot. And branding does this. Neocon. I hate those guys. But you can propagate stereotypes attached to words. And we do this a lot. I won't get into all the nitty-gritties of that. But the last thing that is very, very important that the Nazis loved to do was redefine words. Again, Human being isn't a human being. It's all of us collective, but not the Jews, my friend. We do that. We redefine words all the time. I've gone through examples of just spamming the redefinition of words. It is dangerous, dangerous, dangerous when we redefine words. Because when you can control words, you control people's perception of reality. I'm sounding like a broken record here. But this is the battlefield of culture, is on how we describe words. And I talked about the fog pill in the last episode, saying a bunch of words that have no meaning. And we need to use the scalpel of what exactly do you mean by that? So that breaks the fog pill. Okay, well, the fetal heartbeat is just an electrically active clump of cells. What exactly do you mean by that? Well, it's much less complex than an adult's. Okay, what exactly do you mean by that? Well, it doesn't have the four chambers in the exact same way. It's currently only one chambered. It's not pumping blood as effectively. Okay, so let's take it. What do you mean? So it's less of a heart? So what do you mean by that? So we can't define them as human. They're less complex. Okay, what do you mean by that? You just cut away until you get to reality, and do that as much as you can, and you can help out whoever you're talking to by giving them some more words to work off of. But do not accept the statement as the status quo. When you're fog-pilled, do not accept the statement as the status quo or as being true, because the statement probably needs a few, what does that mean? What do you mean by that? What are you getting to? Before you can reveal the truth. So, we implemented this new program, MAID. Okay, what do you mean by that? Shh. Oh, well, it's medical assistance in dying. It's really cool. So you're killing people? What do you mean by that? Well, not exactly. We're just putting an IV into their arm and injecting them with a couple of drugs, a cocktail of drugs, including potassium and some other psychoactive drugs and a paralyzing agent so they can't move or scream or call for help, and then they die. Oh, well, that's what you're doing. That's very different than MAID. I didn't quite get what you were saying there. So we need to fight this language battlefield and make sure language accurately represents reality. And if you want more info on that, watch my fog-pilled episode. It's really good, by the way. But I've lingered on our fourth part a little too long. But number 4 is that propaganda can change a nation. Number 5, parents, not the state, are responsible for raising children. An ideology that destroys humanity cannot, I repeat, cannot be propagated through the family unit because it breaks the family unit down. So inevitably, it's a pathogen. This is a mind virus. The idea of relativism and authoritarian governments and this mucky world that just leads to the death, okay, of a nation. I don't know what you want to call this. I should name a pill after it. We could call it the death pill, okay? You swallow the death pill, you are now a part of the virus that kills society. The problem is that can't propagate effectively through families. And so, again, I'm not saying them as in a specific group of people. I'm just saying the people that want society destroyed, whomever they be, must reproduce their ideology in schools. Because they can't have kids effectively. They can't raise kids effectively. You cannot convince a nation of family units unless you have an in to bypass parents. So whether they're pushing more liberal, and I'm talking socially liberal or socially conservative, Hitler tended to be relatively socially conservative. He had some things like he really encouraged young people to have sex, to have Hitler babies. He really encouraged some liberal things. The Nazi government was more socialist than you think. It was very socialist. There were aspects that were very capitalist as well, but it was not a free market economy. And it would lean towards a socialist state. It was called a socialist republic. But that's beside the point. Whatever the ideologies the state are pushing, they have no business getting in the way between parents and kids. And again, this idea is emotionally charged. That you're some insane person by pointing out the obvious fact that a government that has absolutely no clue who your kid is can push a curriculum on your kid that tells you that your parents are bad, that your family is bad, that your culture is evil. This is a mind virus, mind you. And I want to tie this back to moral relativism. And this is a quote from your boy himself. When there is no truth, education is reduced to indoctrination. Only the things that benefit the government, the state, the educator, should be learned. History does not matter. The reality to history, the names, the dates, the glory, what really happened, heroes, do not matter. The only thing that matters is whatever ideology your teacher, whoever's writing the curriculum, wants to push. Because with moral relativism, their truth is the only truth that matters. The powerful's truth, or the victim's truth, is the only thing that matters. So here's a random list that shows you what kids are being taught in school. This is from our book, our lovely book about Hitler. Just leading in a random list of... Actually, no, this is not a random list. This is a 7-point list from teachers in North Carolina. We're told that the values that they should instill in their children. Number 1, there is no right or wrong, only conditioned responses. Number 2, the collective good is more important than the individual good. Number 3, consensus is more important than principle. That means whatever everybody agrees on, that's the truth, not principle. Principle is truth. Consensus might be a lie. Number 4, flexibility is more important than accomplishment. Number 5, nothing is permanent except change. Number 6, all ethics are situational. There are no moral absolutes. Number 7, there are no perpetrators, only victims. These things happen. Isn't this insane to think about? Kids are being taught this. You and I were taught this in school. I was taught one time that the flag was divisive. Like when we were supposed to draw, the first thing that came to our minds when we thought of America, and I drew a flag, and some other people drew a flag, and our teacher commented on it. It's really divisive. You mean the country that we all support? What are you talking about? There's a mind virus that wants the destruction of the West, that wants the destruction of Christianity. We cannot allow this, people. So this brings up, so 5th point is, you can't let the state educate your kids. And I'm not saying don't send them to public school. I'm not saying homeschool everybody. I think that's a great option. I will probably be homeschooling my kids. But you as a parent need to take responsibility. Get on your school board. Make changes. And that leads me to point number 6. And 6.5. Your voice matters. And don't be silent about your faith. You know, for the first year or so almost of my job as a phlebotomist, I didn't mention my faith or Christianity to everybody. And I was really convicted when I was reading this book because I was taught that you need to leave your faith at home. It's good to be a Christian. It can be your little side gig, but we're here, we're all adults here. We're here to work. But then I noticed that that wasn't a two-way street. In fact, it never had been. One of my coworkers openly talked about going to pride parades, supporting liberal candidates, hating billionaires. Their religion is welcome at work, my friend. And so I said, why not mine? I'll bring Christian books to work. I'll invite people to church. I'll play worship music on my iPhone. Now, I want to be clear that I'm a terrible Christian. I'm the least of Christians. If Paul was the least of these, I don't even know where I'm at, okay? So I'm not flexing on you, my faith. I'm terrible, okay? Let's be very clear. But we all need to openly be Christians. Remember that quote I told you about Hitler was okay with Christians as long as they didn't let it affect their lives. That's you and me. If you believe in a higher power, dude, it should change you radically. Not radically in some hippie sense, but radically as in it should change the way you interact with people on a daily basis. Don't suppress the spirit. What do I apply that? Like that's a fog-filled statement from the Bible that's been applied incorrectly. But you're a Christian, act like one. That's a good interpretation of it practically. Love your neighbor. Be vocal about good values. Don't tolerate disgusting debauchery in your workplace, in your culture, in your society. Trust me, there are a lot less gay people in America than Christians. And you know who has a bigger market of social media and of mainstream society? It ain't the Christians, my friend. It ain't the Christians. And again, throat clearing land acknowledgements. I don't hate gay people. I just think they're a fantastic example of taking over society from a relatively, like a minority group convincing the society of their ideas. They put on a clinic, dude. So there's going to be this economic and this cultural noose tightening around our society. And we as Christians are going to want to take the easy way out. Just let one more slide. It's okay. Just negotiate next time. Just let it go again. And one day the noose is going to be too tight. We're going to get strangled. That's a pretty dark analogy. But we as Christians need to understand that silence is complacency. And complacency is cowardice. And being a coward will mean the destruction of the modern church. We've already seen that, guys. Our parents allowed the church to be overthrown. There's a gay flag at one of the closest churches to my house. That pastor is probably not a great person. I'm not going to be honest. We must look back to the cross. And we need to bring that with us everywhere. One of my most important takeaways for my faith as far as this last semester was that I'd been sold this lie that God was a easy, comforting, cute, cuddly God, because that's how my friends brand him. When they're trying to sell, when they're trying to be evangelists is just being a salesman for Christianity. They market Christianity as this cute, fuzzy relationship. And I was like, okay, I believe in God. I don't believe in that. I'm going to go work, forgetting about him for now. I'll figure that out when I get home. And I was really convicted, like, God isn't the God of ease or prosperity or comfort. He's right there when you're going through a terrible day of work. He's right there when your mom just died. He's right there when you speed past some bum driver going 20 under. And I want to live my life. I want you to live your life as if God is real every second of the day. Now, you don't need to have this emotional warmth connection to him at all times. That's just a lie we've been sold, okay? But what I think it means to take God into your life is to treat the world around you like he exists. Like, if Big Brother's watching, how am I going to treat my coworker? How am I going to treat my patient? How am I going to treat my family? Right? Love God, love your neighbor. So, my 2 calls to action. Go become a local and cultural leader. In your small avenue of society, you actually have a surprising power. Over the course of 70 years of human life, even a relatively insignificant person can do a lot of benefit. So if you believe these things, if God forbid you made it through 49 minutes, almost an hour of Elijah yapping, God forbid you made it that far, you can have a huge, huge impact on your society. And my final call to action is just to be grateful, dude. We grew up in one of, if not the most incredible times in human history. Gen Z is the last stand. We are the last stand for the West. And so we need to be grateful, because even if we fail, even if the West falls, we're probably going to spend our entire lives reaping the benefit of it, of technology, of modern appliances, of the culture that our ancestors built. We are cashing in the checks proverbially. So I don't want to end on some bad note. I think America, there's a light at the end of this tunnel. And I don't know what it is. We've been through a lot of bad stuff. Gen Z's got the highest church attendance of any of our previous generations. Okay, we could do it. We could save the culture before it's too late. But this is our last chance. Because the economy is not going to be around forever, and it's dwindling. And when that crashes, if we're not culturally in the right place, bad things are going to happen. That's the rant for today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I always want to end every time by saying, big dog, I care about you. And even if that's me, I care about myself. I care about my family. If you're watching, find my Instagram. Find my phone number. You probably have it. Reach out. Reach out, big dog. I care about you. If nobody else does. You got me. You got God. You have a great day.